Hey guys, I thought I'd share with you another friendly match that I played against my real life friends. Obviously with the lockdown being on at the minute, we obviously can't play in real life, so we decided to move our game online, and well, this was another 45-minute, 45-second game that I played. So I started as whites with the move e4, my opponent played c5, and here I entered into my favourite system against the Sicilian, the Smith-Morra, with d4. Obviously named after myself. And after c takes on d4, the strongest line, I now decide to gambit a pawn with c3, and this is the whole point of the Smith-Morra. So I'm actually allowing black to take a second pawn here, but as a result I'm going to go ahead in development. I'm going to get a really good space advantage, big control of the centre, but obviously at a cost of a pawn. So black's strategy is going to be very much, if I can try and swap everything off, try and get into an endgame, I'm going to have a good position because, well, I'm up a pawn, and being up a pawn in an endgame tends to be quite good. Meanwhile, for white, I obviously don't want to swap off anything. I'm going to go for fast development, get all my pieces out, start a big attack very quickly, and hopefully knock out my opponent in a very, very few moves. And I must say, I've got quite a few games that I played in club level where I've had incredibly fast wins with the Smith-Morra, going for quick knockout punches, and I've scored very well with it as a result in club level play. But my opponent, being a seasoned veteran, is much stronger than that, and we'll see how he managed to handle the Smith-Morra in this particular game. So he captured obviously the second pawn, and I captured with my knight here. Just very quickly, for those who play the Sicilian, if you don't want to play a gambit line, which you don't blame me, not everyone wants to play gambits, another idea that I can suggest to you is playing the move knight to f6. And this is the declined variation. It's actually a transposition to an Alpine Sicilian with c3, so it's very similar to that. And the whole idea is this: after e5, knight to d5, recapturing the pawn. Oh, sorry, knight to f3. So still trying to tempt black into capturing here, because obviously then this will allow this knight to be captured. Knight to c6, I then capture this pawn, and okay, black gets but actually quite caught up in development. He's absolutely fine here, but white gets a nice bit of space as well, so he's got good control of the centre and a bit more space. But generally it's a very equal position. This, both sides do very well, and certainly playable for both sides. So going back to the actual game then, so what happened here? So my opponent decided to play the more accurate response, which was capturing here, and this would be if black wants to go for the win and try and swap off everything, but obviously by capturing this he has to weather a bit of a storm, because I'm going to get very fast developments and get all my pieces out to good squares. So after knight captures, this is my plan. I want to get my other knights to f3, I can get my bishop to c4, castle very quickly, queen to e2, get my rook to d1, my other rook to c1, and then develop this bishop to f4 or g5, depending on what the position throws. And this is pretty much what you can play against every Sicilian that you face, and different setups that black can play here. The problem for black now is his development's going to be very difficult to do. He'd love to get his knight out to f6 to attack this e5 pawn, but if he plays this straight away, well, this is a bit of a mistake. After now e4, suddenly this knight has no good square that it can go to. It can't go to any of these squares, as we've got pieces defending against it, so in fact they'll have to come back to g8. I've had this in quite a few games, even over the board, and I've just had very good positions now, as it just gives me another tempo to play with, and a very, very good position as a result. So going back to what actually was played then, so we entered into a mainline position, knight to f3, g6, so the whole point of this, stopping this pawn from moving forward for now, c4 and a6. Okay, so a6 is a really interesting move, and it's a really important move in pretty much every Sicilian that you ever play. So the whole idea of this is with a6 you're starting black's queenside expansion here. So at some point b5 is going to be played, kicking this bishop away to somewhere, and then black is going to start his queenside attack. The other advantage of a6, and I think another reason why it's played, is it stops this knight from jumping to this potential harassment square. In a lot of the Sicilians, the queen loves to come to maybe c7 at some points, as this is probably the best place for it to develop, but obviously this allows the knights to come here and start attacking this queen. Another thing as well is this pawn. Another reason why this knight b5 idea is annoying is black would love to play the move e5 at some point, but of course it leaves this pawn a little bit weak. It becomes a backwards pawn, and obviously if this knight is able to get to b5, it can start creating some attacks on this pawn. So that's why a6 is played in a lot of Sicilians, and it's good to play it as early on as possible. The problem with it, though, obviously, is it's not a developing move, as now black is going to fall a bit behind in development. But here I decided castle here, and then knight to f6, and well, I made probably my first little inaccuracy of the game. I decided to play queen to e2, and as I say, this is my thematic plan. I want to get my queen here. The problem is now there's a favourable move order that black can play to get a slight edge in this position. Not totally losing, but it's just a very frustrating move to come up against, and that's the move bishop to g4. Very annoying move, as it now stops my potential plan of playing this e5 move. This e5 break is the main pawn break that I want to play for in the Smith-Morra, but this bishop kind of stops that from happening, as at any point it can exchange off this knight, which would be a key defender of this e5 square, and if I don't want to butcher my pawn structure by playing g takes on f3, I've got to put my queen to f3, which obviously is then another defender that's taken away from this e5 square. So it's a very frustrating move to come up against. In retrospect, we looked at this position for quite a bit, because I kind of consider this the first big error in the position. And well, there's not really a huge amount better on the other lines, really, but I say not a huge amount better. I think there's some of the other lines are, they're quite interesting anyway. You can play h3 here. This is one of the ideas that we considered, and it has been reached 29 times in master level play, so it's definitely not a terrible position. The whole idea of it being that it stops his bishop from coming to g4, and yeah, that's basically it. But I guess in my opinion, I thought this move was just a little bit too slow. It doesn't really fit in the spirit of the Smith-Morra. In the Smith-Morra, you want to be playing for fast, energetic play, get all your pieces out, start a big attack. Playing prophylactic moves like h3, is that really in the spirit of the Smith-Morra? I'm not sure. But in actual fact, I looked at this line, and actually it's not terrible at all. So instead of getting this bishop developed, now e6 can be played, also not e5, e6, and then we get into the same pattern, thematic pattern now for white now. So everything starts developing. Get our pieces to good squares. We've now got these ideas of e5 now, forcing the knight back to e8. So that's certainly an interesting line. Otherwise, here actually black can probably get on with his counter-attack along here, and yeah, it's a totally fine position for white and black. I think both players are going to do well in these positions. But I guess the problem with that h3 idea, as I say, it gives black that one more turn to develop his pieces and hopefully get some safety in his position. So the best move, the move that's been played the most in master level games here is actually bishop to f4, and well, as I said, this has the idea to maybe sort of get ready this e5 push basically. So can the bishop still come to g4? It can. But now it's not so bad, as because we haven't committed our queen to e2, we can now play the move h3, and this allowing this knight to come back to this bishop to maybe come back to the square eventually at some point if this knight ever comes to h5. But also now after, let's say, the bishop comes to h5, we can move the queen to b3. So now this isn't we got our queen developed a different way. We're now attacking potentially this this f7 square. And I think plays certainly absolutely fine here. There's one tricky line though that we were looking at with what happens after queen to a5, and here I think there's a draw sequence here if we wanted to. Well, actually maybe not. Or you could offer a draw with this if you wanted to, I guess. Would that work? And then we'll just come back here. But in actual fact, after this, we're coming here b5. Ooh, okay, yeah, oh no, b5 can be played though, surely. So check. Interesting. So, well, b5 probably isn't the move then, because we can capture here. And, well, it's interesting. Knight here. Oh, I see. Oh, that's so cool. Wow, okay. It's a miracle to think there's a game in this position where black lost, but black managed to still win this position. But that black was a 2600 grandmaster versus white, who was only 2300. So absolute miracle he managed to pull this win out of thin air. But okay, so going back then, but yeah, because we haven't committed with e2, we can now potentially still come to b3 and create some problems for black. Okay, so going back, so the other move then that he could potentially play is just capturing here on f3. Again, absolutely fine with this, capture here on f3. We're okay. It's we can still get our pieces to good squares. Maybe rook here, maybe instead. The rook here, and then push this pawn now onto that e5 square at some point. So I'll give you a sample continuation: e6, rook f to d1, b8, bishop to e2. This is what's been played on the book, and yeah, there's some interesting ideas here. You can actually give up a weird exchange, a bit of a funky exchange, but white has a lot of piece activity. He's got good control of the centre, so that he's actually get some ample compensation for that piece, and actually he can actually win back this this rook now here. So there's been a few games reached here. I think both sides are doing absolutely fine. On the one hand, black has managed to trade off a few pieces, but white has given back. He's got the pawn back, and I think he's got quite a nice position from here to play with. Okay, so going back to what actually happened in the game. So yeah, as I say, I played this played this queen to e2 idea, which allows us bishop g4. I just played knight rook to d1, just continuing my thematic plan. Kind of unaware what black's doing here. E6 was played, and I played bishop to f4, which is probably the first mistake of the game. And well, I really didn't want this knight coming to e5, so I thought I'd better stop that potential threat from happening. The problem is here, well, black had a really strong and powerful move here that he played that I just totally missed in this position, and that is the move knight to h5. I did not see this move at all. So, I think certainly in my head I'm thinking, okay, the knight will probably come to the side, but this is a really annoying move, as now I haven't really got any good square for this bishop to go to. The one idea I looked at was coming to g5, but after quite a few exchanges here, there's this long continuation here. Actually, black is still up a pawn here, and the big advantage, as I say, he's managed to swap off another piece, a couple pieces anyway, and also queens. He's up a pawn going into a very good endgame, so certainly a very promising position now for black. But going back then, instead of that, another move that I looked at, well, it wasn't very appetizing, but I just thought, okay, maybe I can come to queen to e3. Again, doesn't really offer me a whole lot here, as now there's a few swaps here. Black will start swapping loads of pieces off, and well, yeah, I mean, black's slowed down my attack, he's slowed down my position, and he's got a very good position here now. He can just castle normally. He's doing absolutely fine here. So That's a really nice continuation. So it's very difficult to meet this. There just really isn't much I can do. So here, after this knight came here, I just decided to I just decided to go a bit crazy at this point, and I captured this pawn on d6. I thought there were some complications here. Sadly, this move doesn't really work all that well. So my opponent now captured back, and this is my idea. I thought, okay, create this pin and win back a piece, and just try and liven the position, open the position up, maybe. But it just doesn't work. He can now capture this this knight. Better actually was probably just taking this pawn first, and the continuation looks a little bit like this. I'll take this bishop, exploiting this pin, but he can still capture. I take here. There's lots of exchanges, but actually I emerged out of this and exchange down, and actually also still a pawn down as well. So definitely not a position that I wanted to play. And then going back, so he captured here on f3. There was again quite a few exchanges that happened here, but black emerges out of this absolutely fine. I played knight to e4, trying to reclaim the knights. But yeah, I mean, black played this absolutely fine. He played queen here, which still holds on to this bishop, and now also creates a counter-attack here. I now started hitting this knight to try and reclaim that piece, but he calmly just played bishop to e7. Okay, and this allows me to take the knight, but I think black's got certainly a fine position here. He's still up a pawn, he's exchanged off a few pieces. My attack is just pretty much up in smoke now. It's very difficult to defend this, and I've just an interesting, you can see with these arrows, I've pointed out as well, you can always take this pawn on b2, and this queen has as nicely defends this g7 square, one of the key defenders of the black king. So anyway, castles happened, knight to g5, so I tried to create some complications. I think better here, and it's sad to say, but I should actually just play relatively safe here now and just aim for a rubbish endgame if I want the best continuation possible. So maybe playing this rook to c2 or queen to e2, defending this b2 pawn, and just have to suffer in this position and maybe get a draw. But as I say here, I'm not about that in the Smith-Morra. I want to try and go for the win and attack as much as possible and just avoid an endgame. So I tried to create some more complications, but this just worsens my position. h6 was played, which is absolutely good move. I played h4 trying to create another complication, but it's actually no good. He can just take this pawn if he wants to. I played rook along here. I moved to here. I was thinking about if I captured this and then rook captures, this would be totally winning for me. But he doesn't fall for this. He can he could take with the queen here now and be absolutely fine in this position. He's now still threatening this and then also this pawn as well. So pretty horrible prospect. So I just moved my rook along. There's a couple captures. g6 was played, and now he played queen to b2, and this now defends these vulnerable squares next to the king. And well, my position is just dreadful here now. I tried to once again play for more complication, putting my rook here to block this g7 square, and maybe create a mating attack here, but it's absolutely nothing, as now he can play d1 with check. I moved my king to h2. This is actually a mating attack now. I played bishop to bishop to d6 with check. I now tried to block it with f4, but after captures, I capture back. He can now capture this rook because my rook has moved away from the defense of the other one. And well, I just end up blundering here with queen to h3. I didn't really have anything better here. If I try and do rook to h4, well, he just comes back. I think this is a safe continuation, just forcing off the exchange here. This queen has nowhere it can go to, but better if he wants to go for the mate. Queen to c7 after, well, the only move to slow down the mates, put it this way, is This is definitely a computer move, but okay, let's say g3 looks a bit more human. Queen to c2, queen to h3, then rook to h1 check. Comes here, and this is a nice mate actually on e4 now. So this pawn defending this square, but obviously all these squares taken up here. So yeah, very interesting game. Obviously, just one little, well, I say little complication, but one little move order problem, and my position started to unravel a little bit, and as I became more desperate I started to make more mistakes and try and force complications that certainly weren't there. But in any case guys, I hope you enjoyed this game. I'll speak to you guys soon. Take care.